So I remember in 2016 I had joined. I just wrote a mail to CAF director telling that I'm so and so, I'm interested in PhD research. Can I attend? So he said that he was so happy. He told never a research scholar has the audacity to ask me like this. But I'm so thrilled and happy that you reached out to me that you can come. So you won't believe, like I was the only youngest member there. With the tag of the CAF conference, I was given accommodation, food, travel, everything. But because I was an exception for them, because they never realized someone even asked like this.
Hey viewers and listeners, welcome to the 16th episode of the Right Now Show. Last week we had Formula One trivia, which was pretty interesting, at least for us. And we'll try to bring in more episodes of that sort. And today we are going to talk about a totally different topic. We are going to talk about doing PhD. And for that, we have a special guest. Not just a guest, actually, he's been a childhood friend of both of us. Uh, for us, it's been like how many years, man? It has been, we met since 2008, right?
Eight.
2008. So yeah, 13 years of friendship, and yeah.
We were in the hood when we were children, so that's why we became childhood friends.
Okay, we were
We're from
never in
the
the
hood.
hood, but yeah, I get the emotion and bad joke. So without any further ado, I'll let Abhinandan introduce our guest for the day.
Today, we have with us. Hey, one second, I think the intro is already there on his. Yeah.
And he put that
yeah.
Shri also in the beginning.
Yeah, yeah.
Respect.
yeah, like the Chi Somya and all will be there, no? Like, yeah, so we have Shri Chiranjeevi Garu, like yeah, but on a serious note, we have a doctor with us, and it's not a doctor that you guys know. It's not those doctors who save lives, but here's a doctor who saves and then promotes education. So he's an equal. He's in an equal. No, he's in an equally noble profession, right? As a doctor, we have with us Shri Chiranjeevi Garu G. Aditya, who is a doctoral research scholar in the management and the commerce department of Sri Satyasai Institute of Higher Learning. Uh, Gadi or G. Aditya. Gadi is a short form that we call him, but G. Aditya is one of the most inspiring people that we all have met. Primarily, his thirst for knowledge and his drive to seek knowledge, and then obviously keep asking questions in terms of, hey, look, what is this? What is, if not this, what is that? So that's something that we've all picked up, and we've all seen him across these years that we've been in this hood of when we were children, right? And G. Aditya took that step further, right, in terms of asking questions, and then he chose a different career, right, which is of asking questions and this noble profession of being a doctor, and then in the education field, right? So, with all of that mess in the introduction, I would like to humbly and with gratitude welcome to this lovely show, Shri Chiranjeevi G. Aditya Garu.
Hi guys. Hi Abhinav, hi Abhinandan.
Hey,
It's
what's up, bro? How's life? Yeah.
good man. It's really wonderful to catch up with school buddies. As he said, you go into the memory lane of 12 years or 13 years what you have spent. But also, this is very special because it's not just a catch up, but I'm really honored to be part of this podcast show which you're doing, the Right Now show. Firstly, a huge round of applause and kudos for both of you guys for doing this podcast. I would say, I would say that definitely the output is very close to professional output. I've seen a lot of your videos,
That means
and
it's
I
not professional, Abhinandan. Noted. He told it's close to professional, but it's not.
Taking down the notes. Yeah.
It's like definitely. I'm sure like you will reach great heights, and I'm sure in future it will become one of the top podcasts, and that time I can say that I was part of the seed funding round, the initial part of the guest list. But yeah, great guys. Like doing anything consistently needs a lot of effort. I'm sure these are not the only thing you do. You're already in corporate, a lot of busy schedule life, but great guys. And hi to all the listeners and the viewers for this podcast. I'm sure we will try our best to keep it engaging and interesting. It will be worth of your time to be part of this session.
Yeah, enough about us, man. Now tell us about yourself.
Cool. So yeah, as you said, like definitely, I have a lot of pride to say that I'm part of this noble profession. So research, which finally lands up into teaching or academia. Yeah, so when it comes to PhD, it's becoming a buzzword right now. Like a lot of focus is happening on lot of focus is going on research and innovation, right? But yeah, it has its own challenges. It has its own truth tales and the secrets of the trade, right? So we will discuss about that. But to give a brief background to myself is that I've done my bachelor's in commerce. Then I went on to do my master's in financial management. So I didn't. So I didn't choose a regular MBA where it would be a lot of stuff which would repeat from a BCom background. I wanted to go specialized into finance. That is where most of the postgraduate course you have a project work right in the end of the second year, like you'll be submitting a project. So that inspired me, that project work, undertaking a project work in a very small level of a master's level, that inspired me to take up uh, the action of research more seriously as a full time career, something like lasting to 4 to 5 years. So that choice I made after my masters. But there is a reason for that. Like I wanted to be in the teaching profession from childhood. From childhood I always loved explaining something. And like people say that when you explain you get more clarity, right? So even in corporate life you would be going through, when you explain your juniors or when you take an orientation session, you get clarity. So I was experiencing that in my school days, also in college days. I'm sure we all have studied together, so we used to have some amazing experiences where the concept might be very complicated when taught in the class, but then there is one batchmate of yours who's trying to simplify it and explain to you
One night
just
before the exam.
yeah, exactly. And that stays on, that stays on. So I was enjoying that. I was enjoying teaching, explaining, and so each one gets a different level of excitement, right? So I was getting the joy when others were understanding when I was explaining. But I was also clear that to take up teaching as my profession I need to do a PhD. So it's like that's what the country needs. So it's a mandate. So you can go for ad hoc teaching in universities where you're not into temporary roles. You can do part-time teaching being the corporate, but to go as a full-time professor or like to grow up the ladder. See now in any organization you have ladders, right? You'll join as an associate, then manager or vice president. So same thing happens in academia also. You join as an assistant professor, then you become associate professor, then you become senior level professor, then after that you might become a vice chancellor or something like that, senior. So for that a PhD is a must to get into that ladder. So if you don't have a PhD, then you're not eligible for all this business of growth, or professional growth cannot happen. But also when it comes to PhD, I was very clear that I wanted to do in the finance stream itself because that is what my strength. So I looked for opportunities, and then I started my PhD in the same institute where I did my graduation and post graduation. So that was my comfort level to carry forward. I At this point of time I have submitted my thesis. So with that I am done with my work. Uh,
That's pretty
so
good to know.
yeah.
Yeah, so Gadi, like since you entered and like introduced us to how you got into PhD. So for the viewers, can you like quickly just explain what is PhD and what it comprises of? And
Right.
uh, yeah, you already told us like what the hierarchy is in the
Yeah.
academia. So you can tell us about the course itself.
See, to tell in a line, PhD is the highest form of degree you can obtain in any stream, right? So the PhD stands for, doctor in philosophy. So philosophy means knowledge. So the art of obtaining knowledge. So be it any stream, right? Be it science, management, engineering. How are you developing knowledge? So the purpose of human existence has been that, right? So to inquiry, they call it inquiry. So every species never didn't have that ability to inquire, so we had that ability to inquire. So when you talk about philosophy, people who come to your mind, like Socrates, Aristotle, so they have actually thought about how we inquire, how to obtain knowledge. Is the truth, where is the truth? Correct. Right. But in simple terms, it's the highest form of degree you obtain in any stream or any course, and a systematic way of approaching a problem, and not just finding solution, but a thorough scanning of the existing knowledge and building on top of that, right? So
Yeah.
I would differentiate the I would say that's why it makes PhD different with any other exercise of finding knowledge, right? It's very systematic. You have an approach to do it, and you're not just hitting at the dark, but you're scanning through the existing body of knowledge and then building on it. Just a quick aside, if you see Google Scholar, so that's one of the product of Google,
Mhm.
right, which is for academia. Okay. So where you can find literature, already works done. So the tagline for Google Scholar is standing on the giants of the shoulder, right? So research is
Shoulders of the
not,
giant.
yeah, shoulders of the giant, right? So it's not about actually looking for answers, but you use the existing knowledge, stand on top of it, and then look forward. That's why the knowledge will grow, right? Or else it will be standalone pockets, or all will be doing
Yeah,
their own type of research.
we'll be
So
reinventing the wheel.
yeah, reinventing the wheel, that we have to avoid and go forward. So that I would call as an systematic journey which you undertake in a PhD. Just like any course, any MSc or a BSc or an engineering course, you do start with a coursework for PhD. It depends from universities to university. Some have 2 years of coursework, some have 1 year of coursework. In that coursework, you have mainly three parts. One is the research skills which you need to develop. That is a philosophy part, right? That's a philosophy part which is
Mhm.
not taught in your finance or chemistry or physics, right? So till then you're been just assimilating concepts, but here you are in a stage where you need to develop the knowledge further. So they give you understanding of knowledge philosophy. Okay, that is. Second will be basic English writing, because till now you have been writing all informal sort of English, but here you are going to go into academic writing. So that training you are given. And the third is your core subjects, which you are going to continue it from your masters, go more deeper. So these are the three aspects of your coursework, which can last either to 1 year or 2 years in any university. You write an exam, then you clear that. During this, you're actually getting ready for a PhD journey. So that would be a typical curriculum for in a PhD. Then you're on your own. All the knowledge you have got in the 2 years, the basic knowledge, and now it is up to you how you translate this knowledge into action and find an interesting result.
I never knew this exam thing and all. I mean, this is something, yeah, that's there. But Gadi and Aditya, so you mentioned about the curriculum, right? And then before this recording, we hit the record button also. You were very specific on the four W's and the one H, right? Which is a backbone, which is essentially a backbone of doing the PhD. So a brief touch on that, like, and then how does that really impact your PhD?
So I think we covered about what is PhD. It's definitely the end of a degree or a certification which you can get in a particular subject, and it basically puts you the summit of a knowledge of a body of knowledge and makes you a subject matter expert. So tomorrow you are a PhD in electronics. So you are a subject matter expert in that. Tomorrow, so that is the benefit you're getting by doing PhD. What is PhD? But now coming to the question of why, like why we do need to do a PhD. So when I said about my personal journey, because I want to be in the academia, I want to go into teaching. That is my long-term goal. So doing PhD is an essential. It's a must, right? But there are other reasons also to do PhD. One is where you want to get into, for example, doctors do PhD. Okay, so people do MBBS, people do MD, and then they go for research because their goals are different. They don't want to sit in a clinic and look for
Mm.
patients, but they want to take the knowledge ahead, right? So imagine, just giving an example to you. So if all the doctors were only attending at patients, then what about the new methodologies of diagnosis? How who will develop that? So in 1970s we had a few doctors collaborating with physics and electronics people and got out the MRI machine, right? So now that has changed the entire medical industry. So now if these people were not doing research, everyone will be only diagnosing and like prescribing crocin or paracetamol, right? But
Yeah, we
someone has
wouldn't have got COVID vaccine also by now.
exactly
Yeah.
huge amount of research. So there are some people who are tuned, who want to do research and not to do and not just be in the profession. Take for example, engineering field. So either you can go into construction and civil engineering and start getting into action, but there are people who are doing research on finding new materials of building institutions, or like construction, or new methodologies to do. So that is also one way where you have a personal interest, not to just work but help others who are working, right? So you want to go ahead of them. And it's like, my professor used to tell that research is like actually going into the forest and making way for others, so people can come behind you. So you're cutting the trees and making the way for people.
Such a deforestation, guys.
But for the
Yeah.
benefit of the greater good. So so that way, that is one reason where people do research. But let me also get into the reality that what happens that in many cases people also do research who who don't want to work in a setting, who don't want to. So it's like in a PhD I can say that you are your own boss, right?
Basically, they
So
want to pass time.
yeah,
They
I,
want
I
to be
won't
like,
I won't
ah,
I won't say pastime, but they don't want to get into a rigid and a
okay.
very restricted environment like a corporate
Like a
setting.
corporate, yeah.
Yeah, so you have a lot of freedom. So you have only one supervisor, and take it from me, that supervisor is not only having you, he will have 15 to 20 students. So you don't want to be so I can say, I can draw some parallels from an entrepreneur, right? So
Yeah.
who want to start his own, leave it to me, I will do it, like that. So those are also people who like the freedom what a PhD gives you, right? So that is also one reason why people do PhD. So that is one thing. Then see, when we asked about this 4W1 nudge, so that becomes a fundamental core of any PhD's understanding. So any topic you give or any problem you give, we start looking at that like that way: why, how, what, right?
I wanted to ask you specifically to about you, right? So life is all about choices, right? And we know that. And you were my classmate. And when was that specific time? And was it something that builds across a period of time, saying, "Hey, look, I want to go to the PhD. I want to do a PhD," or is there a specific time and point wherein the turning point, which is a choice that you make, saying, "Look, I don't want to go and do an MBA, right? Rather, I would like to do a PhD, right?" And that being said, is PhD for everyone, right? Because we know, I mean, people can speak and they say, "Hey, look, I want to be a PhD," but is it really for everyone, right? So you made the choice, you've traveled or you traversed that whole journey, right? Looking back now, can you obviously you'll be in a better position to say, look, this is for this people, right? This is not for these people. And you've seen a vast variety of people who've actually done this. Some have kind of said, hey, look, no, maybe they've gone to that path and they've said, this is not for me. Some have gone and they've kind of excelled in this path. So whom is it for? The first question is, what was that point for you, right, where you said, I want to? And second question is it for everyone? If not, like, whom is it for?
So to answer the question, like I'm from a family of PhDs, right? So I have from my childhood I have seen many PhDs around me. My uncle is a PhD. My cousins, I think I don't even have a count of how many PhDs I know from my family itself. So there are PhDs after doctor, after finishing doctorate, like medicine. And then my own uncle, who's a PhD in physics, astrophysics. So I have seen PhDs from my childhood, right? So if you remember our childhood, we have this two three ambitions, right? Doctor, pilot, and all. I used to have this ambition of scientist, right? Scientist. So because I used to see my uncle and cousins and all talking science and going to labs and working and all that. So I used to be very clear, like I want to be a scientist in my future, right? So a lot of excitement was there about research, and literally I used to ask when I was like fifth or sixth standard about you have this science puzzle books, right? Who discovered, who invented, all that questions should be
I
very
think you asked me also once, bro. Who gave this textbook and all, like.
so that used to be very exciting for me, very exciting about discoveries and inventions. I used to be very keen about knowing, and especially in our school days we read about that eureka moments of Archimedes and all, no, like eureka moment. So it used to be very fascinating for me to imagine how they got it, like how they even understood these concepts or something like that, right? So from there I got a lot of my inspiration, that I can be very sure. But yeah, that time we don't know that the trajectory is a PhD, then an academia. But I used to be like scientist. I want to be a scientist. But then things turned. I moved away from science. Then I came to commerce. And but even as I said, the love for teaching, or the love, as you rightly in the beginning you put, the thirst for knowledge was there, to know different things, to know new things was always there. It was not dying. But to give little more specific, I started I took a small stint of teaching after after my masters. I joined a NGO. uh, Abhinav also was there with me. We both joined the NGO after our masters. We had opportunity to work in rural schools. So that's where I was interacting with children, and I was teaching them, I was taking classes. The energy what I was getting interacting with young people, younger than you people, was tremendous. So even Abhinav also, we had spent a lot of time together in different schools. So it is such a beautiful osmosis effect you have, like you just observe the energy from the young people. And I decided that for a long time, for a long time goal, I want to be with young people. be with young minds who are inquisitive and questioning and all that, right? So it gave me it cemented my thought that I think I'm made for teaching. For but goals change, right? And so that's a very good iterative process. We need to appreciate that we don't stick to things, but that's good. That iteration is good. So when I was finishing my PhD in the end, like when I was in the late phase of my PhD, fourth year, fifth year, I had teaching responsibilities in the college, but I was feeling a hollowness inside me of teaching MBA subjects because I was not having work experience. Then I understood that tomorrow I'm not going to teach knowledge seekers, right? They are typically coming for a job. Why people are doing MBA? Employability, right? Make me employable. Give me the ability to go and sit in an interview and know what I want from the corporate. So for that, I need to know what is corporate, right? I was getting the doubts. Like I myself don't know what is a corporate world and how I'm going to prepare them for corporate world. So that changed my entire definition that I need to go into corporate, spend some time. I may not be the best corporate person, right? I don't want even to be also. I don't want to excel in corporate, but I want to know the waters so that when I come back to academia, I can guide my students better. That would be a good service I can do for the students. Not only give them knowledge, but actually make them what they came for. So that can be one idea I can give you how I changed my thought process for PhD. But finally, answering your question, who should do a PhD? Like I think personally, not to put anyone down, and there are definitely exceptions in every case. A person should be academically sound to do a PhD. Then the journey will be easier and the journey will be enjoyable. If there are people who don't like to sit and study, right? They want to work. You see people getting into work immediately after BCom because they are not into academia. They can't sit and study or write exam, right? So for them, it is a strict no. That is one thing. Second thing is someone um, who I would suggest that someone who's having the interest to learn new things, but in a very systematic manner, right?
Hmm.
So everyone likes to learn new things, right? No one likes to get bored, but body knowledge, the body of knowledge creation doesn't happen haphazardly. It's very systematic. So in yeah, we hear that Newton was lying down and he discovered gravity, but no one knows the systematic approach he followed after the apple fell down, right? So there is a systematic process for knowledge creation. That is very important. Freedom is given, but it's a very very restricted and a very bounded freedom where you can play around. That is very important. So why I'm telling you this is that I have if you ask, like, you both of you know, like from school days, I have been creative. I'm into art and all that. I like creativity, but my creativity didn't blossom in PhD because there are bounds. There are bounds to be. You can't just do a painting in a PhD. PhD is not a painting. So there is a lot of painting in like there's a painting of canvas of thoughts, but then it has to start getting into buckets or getting into some small streams, which is again why that, because it has to add to the existing body of knowledge, right? It's not standalone. That is why the systematicness is important. So a person who's very creative, who is like thinking out of the box and all that, I doubt a PhD journey might be very difficult for him. Though I may sound little contradictory, why a PhD is all about thinking out of the box, but there is a method to this madness. It's not only madness, which we assume people like Archimedes and all had. It's not just a madness. There's a method to this madness. So people who are good in academics, people who can go into systematic method of and studying or education can comfortably do this journey of PhD. Else, it would be little challenging.
Amazing thoughts that you mentioned, right? But something that I could pick off this whole conversation is, right, the world is more increasingly moving towards instant rewards, right? uh, you put something on social media you want to like, or I mean, it's just so fast. The minute it's just blinking, I think that instant reward is something that's there, right? In education too, if you draw that parallel, I mean, there is a parallel in terms of, say, unit tests or half yearly exams, or there is a test and there is a reward for that test that happens, right? So this is something that I could kind of figure out in this conversation is not there in PhD, because the minute you're on your own, right, the whole instant reward system stops from an institutional perspective, right? Then it's only a matter of you putting rewards to yourself or setting milestones, right? And that is a very difficult that is an aspect that I would like you to like talk about, because we've been used to it all through our life, right? So till MBA or whatever, till graduation, you're used to it. Suddenly that thing is cut off from you, right? And then now you're like, what? I think we've been trained to be like this, but when it's cut off, then it's a different mindset that needs to take over, right? And that mindset really gets a lot of challenges, right? You can go through your ups, you can go through your downs, right? You have to push yourself every day. So how does that really translate to? Because this whole reward thing, I think, morphs into that whole mindset of how do you handle your highs, how do you handle your lows, right? How do you push yourself every day? We don't have someone really pushing us, right? How do you come every day to work and then say, okay, look, this is what I have to achieve, right?
Yeah, I have given a lot of thought about this instant gratification thing, which is happening right now a lot. As you rightly mentioned, we are influenced by social media behavior. But I can say that this instant gratification or reward system is not explicit in a PhD, but it's very in a latent form. So let me give you some basic examples, and then also give you some tips which I have, which I took it from my supervisor and seniors. So one thing, when you're doing work, um, I set small targets to myself. So very small targets. Can it be? It can be like in a, it can be as simple like a daily target or a weekly target. And there are some body of knowledge that is, there are some studies or some streams where you have everyday action and result. For example, take a chemistry person who's doing an experiment. He knows he has made some assumption that end of the experiment, this the result I need to get, right? So he's doing that chemical mixing and all, then finally he's getting a result. So wow, cool, I got the result, right? So in my
Hmm.
case, I'm running a finance program. I have made some assumptions, I have data, I run an algorithm, and finally I get a result. Like, cool, wow, great, right? So small targets, we keep doing it. But what happens is, the challenge is, you don't get into the stage in the first year of research, right? The first 2 3 years get into only reading. So I remember in my first year, when I used to talk to senior professors, they used to tell, just do three things: read and read. They used to tell only reading. Because as I told you before, standing on the shoulders of the giant is not easy. There are so many people already worked on your area. There are areas, there are fields which are 200 years old, 500 years old. So you go through the process of reading. So that time there are a lot of existential doubts you will get. What I am doing, is it even useful? Does it even make a difference in the world if I read this, if I don't read this? That's a very difficult phase, I can say.
Was there some specific incident that you had and said, look, I mean, what am I doing here?
Yeah, multiple times. See, the initial 2 years are going to be a very tough phase. It's going to be exciting because it's all new, because you're reading new things. But end of the day, for example, we do that, right? Like, you go before going to the bed, you think what I did today, right? So in corporate life you have a lot of actions, you have deliverables. But I had days where I have just finished one research paper, that's it. But to finish the research paper I would have taken 20 hours, or as close as to 15 to 20 hours to understand the paper, translate it into my terms, right, and identify objects. Okay, this is what has happened in the research paper. But then you start thinking, so what? So what? Right? That so what question is so haunting, and it can be very painful question. Like, it keep coming to you. But then what is a beautiful thing which happened to me, which my advisor was so clear, that he allowed me to travel. He said, never be confined to your room and think you are changing the world in this room. So he used to ask me, keep applying. So I am coming to the next concept, that which is less spoken, is when it comes to PhD, it's not just finding knowledge in the hidden in the well. It's also about interacting with outside world. So there are a lot of conferences, workshops, summer camps. There are summer schools conducted for research scholars and researchers where you can go and attend. So there are amazing conferences and workshops which are happening at international, national levels. Some are paid conference, some are sponsored conference. So you are chosen by merit. So I had the opportunity to be part of three of the very prestigious conferences. One was conducted by Max Planck Institute of Human Development in Germany. Then there is AMJ, Academy of Management Journal. So that's a top journal in top society in management research from USA. So they had come to India for the first time, and they were asking 25 research scholars to apply. Only 25 chosen research scholars will be taken, and for 4 days they will put you in a camp and give you ideas, give you thoughts. So I had the who's who of management sitting with me on my table beside me, and discussing, making notes, teaching me how to read a paper and all that. Overwhelming experience, right? So it gives you so much of positivity. And then you see other research scholars also going in the same boat. So what happens is that, if
Hmm.
typical theory, when my ass is on fire, I'm scared. But if everyone's ass is on fire, it's okay, like that, right? So when you talk to other research scholars, oh, all are going through the same struggle, man. It's not only you. That gives you so much sanity. It doesn't give you pleasure, but it gives you so much sanity that, okay, bhai, we are not in the wrong path. Everyone is going through the difficulty. But when we go to this conference, so when I go to this conference, they give you opportunity to present, and you're presenting to top people of research who are so encouraging. They are very much supportive. See, they are 50, 60 year old professors. For them we are nothing. We don't even make sense to them sometimes, but they see themselves in us. They are spoon feeding some knowledge to us. They are giving capsules of wisdom which can help me so much. I remember one professor, Professor Jason Shaw. So one of the greatest researchers in management field, also the editor of AMJ, the top journal in management. So he said, when I met him in my second year, so he said that you should have a target that by end of your third year, in your field, if I show you a research paper, you should have the ability to replicate it. A very short formula, okay. He didn't ask me that you need to get a path breaking idea. Can you even understand a good paper? Means, do you have the ability to even understand a research paper and replicate it? That is enough for you. So with that, I used to read papers with that intention. So I'm not reading a paper, then I don't get this problem of so what, right? So I know that, I know this technique now, how to do this, right? So because each research paper will use some technique, right, as simple like a regression or any analysis, any statistical tool they'll use, I have picked up that, like that. So these short formulas and short capsules of wisdom I used to get when I used to attend conference. So ISB is one of the most premier institutions in India. So they conduct a lot of workshops and summer camps. So it used to be like, I would like to also add one more point. is that what I have learned in this journey, that never hesitate to ask. Never. So you don't know where the other person is sitting and in what mood is sitting, that he may tell you come. So for example, there is a conference in ISB called the CAF. So it is organized by Center of Analytical Finance. So they do this conference every year, and top shots in the country come. So for example, they call people like Richard Thaler and Peter Hansen, who are Nobel laureates, right? Nobel Prize winners come for this conference as guests. And not one or two, like you'll see actually the who's who of finance research people there. People have written books. They all come. So, but you, to participate in that conference, you need to be from a very good institution and have done great work. So I am still a beginning my journey in this research. But something told me, and like even my supervisor used to advise me, that keep asking, keep asking. What is wrong in asking? Why feel shy in asking? So I remember in 2016 I had joined. I just wrote a mail to CAF director telling that I'm so and so, I'm interested in PhD research. Can I attend? So he said that he was so happy. He told never a research scholar has the audacity to ask me like this. But I'm so thrilled and happy that you reached out to me, that you can come. So you won't believe, like I was the only youngest member there. With the tag of the CAF conference, I was given accommodation, food, travel, everything. But because I was an exception for them, because they never realized someone will ask like this. And the beauty was, these are the way top researchers, right? So they like to talk to young people, so everyone was talking to me. So I was getting audience with every of all of the top researchers. I took photographs with them. It was like a fanboy moment for them, and they were also happy that someone is asking autograph and all, like imagine. Right. So it was
Wow.
it was a very thrilling experience. And after that, every year I went, every year, 2016, 17, 18, except 2020, every year I went to CAF conference. And I have never presented, to be frank. There are like top works get presented, like professors works gets presented. But I took the I took the ability to understand those great works, right? So I was not getting scared to listen to a top class work. I was having the confidence that you present the work, I'll try to understand. So that was helping me a lot. So all these small things, it gives you a pat on the shoulder. And so I go to the conference, I come back, I'm like some hero in the college. People ask, hey, what happened in the conference, you went there and all. So it gives you so much of self motivation. Like that, I attended this Max Planck Institute of Human Development had an organizational conference. I made a poster presentation. So there I won the prize. So you get a cash award, you get a certificate, again a gratification, right? So small gratification, but that, so I have seen it. uh, I lose the entire motivation. I go for a conference, I am back with so much energy. I have done a significant part of my thesis work. And then again it'll come down. Again I'll go for a conference. So you will also see that in my past 4 5 years, I was not restricted only to my campus. I have been traveling. I've been very active in going across different campuses. Adding one more point, when I travel, you make a lot of friends. And in corporate circle they say networking, right? So now I need to network with other research scholars, other people who are doing research. So we build a very good strong ecosystem of WhatsApp groups. Then you can share your work. Then so many times what will happen, that a particular resource may not be available in your university. You can just put in the WhatsApp group. They will tell, ha mere paas hai, we will share with you. So a great bond gets built attending these conferences. Means I have seen some people only come for networking to conference only. They will not present, they will not even attend the session of presentations, only for networking and making friends, building a good ecosystem, knowing one or two professors. For example, uh, because I had gone to IIM Ahmedabad and stayed for almost 15 20 days. Few of the professors knew me by name, so by discussing. So I remember during this pandemic, when I was at home, I was doing my PhD work. One fine morning, an IIM professor called me. He said that, how are you, WhatsApp and all. Then he said that, see, I have a project which I'm collaborating with a professor in UK. we want a research student who can work on this project. So it was quite strange because he could have given that opportunity to his student, right? But he told me some reasons. See, I think you can do it better and all. I got into this project. It both ways. I learned a lot working in an external project. It gave me good remuneration in euros, and also now I have connected with the UK professor who knows me. So now I'm in touch with him on mails. So like that, your connections slowly start building. If I would have thought that why simply should I go to IIM Ahmedabad? Let me do my work. So this is like that connect the dots concept of Steve Jobs. Now, like you
Yeah.
never know when what will help you. So all these small visits I paid to different campuses, it was very helpful. So I can say these were the small gratification, latent gratification things which I had, which made my journey very smooth and happy.